mode.
I'm recording. It should be good now.
No, it's not working, the recording, but all the broadcast is starting.
Yes, the broadcast has started. Can you move the slides, okay?
You need to start the show, Ricardo?
Yes.
In PowerPoint?
Good.
Excellent.
Okay. Good evening, good morning for everybody. Thank you for joining us for this sections for IFMA, IFMA FMM Consultants Council. Today, we were making this presentation, the smart cities, technology innovation, and their effect on the China's facilities. The presentations will be the following logistics, the question and answers at the end of the presentations, quick survey at the conclusion of the webinar, and PowerPoint and the recorded webinar will be available online via FMCC website. Your participation is great appreciated. The FMCC vision is research on the voice for FMs, the facility management consultants worldwide, to leverage our college expertise to benefit IFMA members and the facilities management professional. The mission is to serve as a global facility management consultants, research, and representative for technology sharing, network and business opportunity, and support of our impact upon the built environmental and value to our clients. How we can help? It's this four strategies: ask, location expertise, locate a speaker. Our platinum sponsoring and ESS gold sponsors, Greg Moore and Derkin, and silver sponsors and Facility Engineers Society, and these are. Now we will in this event and World FM Day that the town is empowering people for a productive world. Our virtual conference is started today. It's presented by more than 18 sections around the world, more than 25 professionals, and 21 hours in the long mega sections. And we are making this around the world and making these points in the timeline zone. Our speakers and moderators, and as today presentation as moderator as me, as Ricardo Carpodi from Brazil. I'm a FMCC webinar coordinator for Western Hemisphere. Today, the presentation will be Smart Cities, Technology Innovation, and their effect on China's facilities. We will be presented by Paul Doherty, President and CEO of the Digit Group. Paul is the President and CEO of the Digit Group and is on the global industry most sought after the true leaders and strategics and integrators of the process, technology, and business. As Senior Fellow of the Design Futures Council, Paul is an award-winning architect, author, and educator, analyst, and advisor to Fortune 500 organizations and global government agencies. Prominent into station the most prestigious architecture, engineer, and contractor firms in the world. A pioneer in the building information modeling, BIM, and a former Fortune 500 corporate officer. Paul is a prominent and high-rated speaker at a number of industry events around the world. Each year, and has been appointed as a guest lecturer at leading universities throughout the world. Paul's current work is focused on smart cities, real estate developments that include financial, design, build, and innovate technology solutions that include the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics Games, the 2022 FIFA World Cup, and the National Transformation Programming in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Australian High-Speed Rail, more 8 new smart city program. Currently, Paul is the co-founder and producer of the incredibly acclaimed and popular AEC Hackathon that launched at Facebook headquarters in Silicon Valley. Paul, it's you.
Thank you, Ricardo. If you could just hand over the controls of the session, that'd be great.
And ask me to pass the slides to Paul.
Okay, we can do that. And welcome to World FM Day, everybody. I'm pleased to represent the China contingent, where we formed a IFMA chapter in Shanghai just about 6 years ago now, which was a big achievement in that the People's Republic of China is literally still being introduced to facility management. My background with IFMA is that I'm a former board member and have been involved with the Information Technology Council and other initiatives as a board member. As Ricardo said, yeah, I'm an architect, a real one, not a software architect, but we've been involved now with getting involved with real estate development, most in areas around the world that include Australia, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and of course our work now in China, which is going to be the focus of this talk. The idea and the goal of this particular session is to expose you as facility managers to the trends that are happening out there that you should be aware of, that there are major initiatives going on around the world that will have a direct effect on how you handle and manage your facilities, both from a physical aspect and also from a digital one. So we are engineers, architects, builders, developers, operators, innovators. Our geographic locations, as you can see on the slide, are wide. They are mostly in the areas that we are building these cities from scratch. The majority of our work is all greenfield cities, and it has been a wonderful experience to be able to reshape the world in ways when you have a white canvas. It also provides us an opportunity to work with government leadership. We do have very good relationships with the White House, which actually then handed our smart cities work into the People's Republic of China because of the agreements that were made between President Xi and President Obama back in November of 2014, where they agreed that each country would lower their carbon emissions by 20% by the year 2030. These types of initiatives that you're about to see today are the hard, pragmatic, and practical approaches that we are using to initiate and to actually implement the technologies, the innovations, so that we can reach those goals that the two presidents have set. Next slide, please. Next slide, Ricardo. Great, thank you. I want to introduce the company briefly, but it will give you a good sense as to how disruptive smart cities are, because we're not talking about one single building. We're not even talking about a campus. We're talking about every aspect of an experience that we call the urban environment. This idea needed to have a different approach to how we deliver cities, because usually cities, they are organically grown over periods of time. You know, the first cities were actually trading ports, and depending on where it was located, either on a coast or on a river, maybe in an inland city, for the most parts, they happen over time. We don't have time. We are now approaching as a society, as participants in the human condition here on the planet Earth, that 80% of our population will be in some form of an urban environment by the year 2050. That's not a lot of time, which means that we have to rethink about how we start to package urban environments, about how you can create density so that you get economies of scale, better economics, safer environments, but with better security that also provide a better user experience. That's a tall order. So we needed to rethink, how do we deliver this? So what we've done is that we've created a design company, a BIM company, Building Information Modeling company, that actually does the production work, and an innovation company. The way that this works is that the innovation company, both products and software, discover new types of technologies in the case of water, energy, healthcare, education, citizen services, transportation, all those big things that make up the ingredients that create the recipes that the design company creates as a master planning group. The reason why that's important is because facility management, as you see in there, is not so much the functional side, it's on the design side. We invite and have invited and will continue to invite the world's best experts in facility management to sit at the design table before we actually start the conceptual design and into detailed design of every single building in our world. And the reason for that is because you guys know how this stuff works. And we need to have that type of thought leadership higher up into the decision-making process so that the outcomes are aligned with the expectations. Next slide, please. So, next slide, please. So this idea of smart city innovations is really at the heart of when you hear things about smart cities. This is no longer, a world that says that we have, very discrete needs. In other words, the old world way of thinking about cities and individual buildings is that we have very discrete processes that we need to, solve if there's challenges involved. Be it, you need a work order management system, well, let's get a piece of software, right? But what we're doing now is saying that's still important, but now the interconnectivity of those things is where the magic happens. We call them urban ecosystems, meaning that there's many different ways of taking individual ingredients, almost like the way that you have a recipe for a dish, for food. And what we do is we say, all right, if we have individual innovations and they do something really, really cool, wouldn't it be cool to see what the resultant effect is and start to treat that as a system? This actually then takes into account the new world of how we're looking at facility management, no longer as machines that we either work, live, or play in, but rather as an organism that actually feeds off of the natural way that things happen, so that we start to have a relationship with the environment where we're partners. We're not the human race trying to control nature, because we've done a very bad job of that. We've created pollution. We've created all these effects that are raising the water levels around the world. And quite frankly, we need to hit the reset button and rethink what that means. The way that we go about this then is to take ecosystems as a series of ingredients so that we can create our cuisines. You want Italian, you want Mexican, you want a Brazilian dish. There are certain ingredients of how much sugar, how much salt that you use. We do the same thing in the management and the design of our cities. Next slide, please. So what I'm about to show you here, and I'm going to assume that once this loads in, that you're going to be able to see a video. And I'm not sure, Ricardo, if you can hit. Oh, there it goes. Okay, great. It's playing for us. Here's one example of what a ecosystem could look like. We have a transportation system in every one of our smart cities, which right now we count for 36 greenfield smart cities around the world. That's our real estate development package right now on the boards. And what we're doing is that either in certain districts or certain cities, we only have autonomous vehicles. They are being manufactured right now in Silicon Valley with a group called Next that we're partnering with out of Italy. What the centipedes do is that they act as transportation devices that can actually connect together when you want to have services. So we're rethinking going to work. Why do you need to stop off at Costa Coffee or Starbucks when you can actually have that service vehicle attached to you on your way to work? This now starts to rethink, what do our cities want to be? 150 years ago, there's a brand new innovation called an elevator, and it fundamentally changed the shape of cities. What we're seeing now with automated autonomous vehicles, the whole world of IoT or the Internet of Things that would interact with these ways of new transportation, we now have narrower roads, no need for traffic lights, and no need for parking lots. Because these pods continuously roam around the city, almost like Uber or any of the other ride-sharing systems out there. And the way that this works is that we're able now to say that it runs like blood through veins and arteries. Again, that biomimicry, getting back to the organism rather than the machine. What that does is that now that also frees up the way that you get around town. We have operating systems that will guide these autonomous vehicles because we are building it from scratch. This is not meant to be used in a hybrid situation. In other words, there are no motorized vehicles in these cities. Now, that's one ingredient, and it's a fantastic one. We'll have these up and operational to show in October in Berlin and in Dublin and Lisbon in November. The actual then implementation of this will happen first in Saudi Arabia, which we'll show you later. So yeah, autonomous vehicles are here to stay, but that doesn't mean that's a self-driving car. We're actually now trying to reimagine what does that really mean. Now, what does that mean for facility managers? Well, this means that the whole idea of parking lots goes away. Now, and this also gets into the autonomous vehicles of things like delivery, emergency services, those types of things that would override certain autonomous vehicle needs. But for the most part, when we're talking about mass transportation, that type of thing, we have to rethink what are we managing, right? How do these pods, especially service pods, affect healthcare? Because the way that these pods are being designed, that we can actually combine larger size pods that would be for your doctor to actually come make a house visit. Or you didn't want to go out to dinner tonight, that night to a restaurant. Well, why not have the chef in his kitchen plug into your home that night in a pod? So again, reimagining, rethinking what the aesthetic quality is of your buildings, of your homes, and then the space between those buildings is now being reimagined in just fantastic ways. Next slide, please. So we have autonomous vehicles as the first ingredient. The next ingredient that we're going to show you is, well, how do these things actually get powered? We have an agreement, a contract with Georgia Tech University in Atlanta, Georgia. They have a Kinetic energy lab that is creating the next generation of clean tech. Clean tech 1.0 is solar, wind, and water. Three very inefficient and, quite frankly, non-cost-effective ways of trying to introduce alternative energy from fossil fuels. So this next generation is saying we need to rethink how we capture energy. So there's two big ways in kinetic energy that you can start to collect this. This is called compression, or in Latin, piezoelectric, or friction, it's called triboelectric. Now, between the two, we have horizontal surfaces and vertical surfaces, compression and friction. The compression, we have made some amazing strides in how to actually implement how you create energy. So for the interior of an office building, we've partnered up with Interface Carpet to be the substrate underneath commercial grade carpet. We can also be underneath wood flooring, ceramic tile, anything like that. Right now, we're generating 300 watts per square foot of energy generation, interior-wise. Now, what that does is that it allowed us to start to take an extra step. Is, well, what would happen if we actually put this exterior underneath concrete, asphalt, or rubber? And now this is where the energy generation started to get really hot, because we're not just talking about feet or people running or jumping up and down. We're talking about vehicular traffic that's generating a lot of power, because the way that the compression system works, as you compress the pads that are underneath that finish, it's actually exciting the molecules that create energy. So we're generating a lot of power. In the case of Interstate 85 in downtown Atlanta, we have a 300-meter lane in the slow lane at the exit to Georgia Tech's campus. And we have the piezo system underneath of it. We're generating 8.4 kilowatt hours of energy in only 300 meters. So we have a tremendous opportunity to create a lot of energy, clean energy, just by movement. So the next step that we took was that we took graphene, which is a newer type of technology that can act as a supercapacitor. What does that mean in layman's terms? A very, very thin battery. So now we're not just taking the generation part, we're also able to store it right there. Now, the really cool part about those two systems together is that you have a closed loop system. But now, what do you use that energy for? We're reusing it with our partners with Qualcomm that has a technology called Halo that we're now moving into dynamic charging, meaning as your electric vehicle, or in the case of our centipedes or automated vehicles, are going on our roadways, you never have to stop to plug in, because as long as you're moving on our piezo pads, you're being dynamically charged. That works. We now have that in production, and it's in Atlanta Hartsfield Airport and at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So this stuff is working. It's exciting. But then what else can we do? So we have energy generation, energy storage. One cool little factoid is that if in our cities, a certain part of the city may get busier than other parts of the city, so there may be more movement on the roadway during, after work for rush hour, right? So you're generating a lot of electricity there, but other parts of the city may not. But because of Qualcomm's Halo and the fact that we have this graphene battery, we're able to load shed and actually level set the entire roadbed of the city at once, so that it's always at 100%. That's an amazing way of saying that we have the ability to create the internet of roadways. So that's the energy generation. We have AVs. We now have two really cool ways of having ingredients to make an ecosystem. Next slide, please. So where this brings us now is to a third ingredient, because if we can generate power, store power, distribute power, what does this really look like? So what we did was that we were asked by Atlanta Hartsfield Airport with Interface Carpet to have this gentleman do a little dance in front of what we call the Selfie station, where he generates enough power by jumping up and down and dancing. You can see the LED lights go up to say we generate enough power. It takes a selfie, and he can go over now and upload that to his social media sites. You can see in the lower left-hand corner that that was the setup we had at Atlanta Hartsfield Airport this past Christmas that ended at New Year's as an experiment. We had over 350,000 people use this system and upload to Facebook. Now, this begins the idea of people that behavior change can happen, because the way that Piezo works in this way, especially in the interiors for facility managers, is that our new buildings, the majority of them will not have electric outlets because there's no need for them. We're generating enough energy by people walking and jumping up and down and running on the piezo pads that with our Halo product from Qualcomm, we can dynamically charge appliances, equipment, lighting, your iPhone, as long as you're in that environment. So this is a real behavior change and a real shock to the system to say, wow, we can actually have a microgrid that makes sense. Next slide, please. Another place that we're doing the experimentation on this idea of having people, people's behavior change, that this isn't all about solar and wind and water. There's a different way of exposing ourselves to this, is that in Dubai, for the Expo 2020, there are 5 open plazas. And what we're doing is leveraging the app that you have to use to get into the different world pavilions during the World Expo, that we're able to push information out. And that push allows us then to say, why don't you go to plaza number 3 at 2:15 and hit the play button, put in your earbuds, and dance along. We have a mob flash dance, dancing in the streets on top of our piezo system. We have LED screens that are going to be surrounding this plaza, and you're going to be able to see the power generated. It's going to go up and up and up, and at the end of the song, we're going to be able to then just say, thank you very much. Just your dancing alone, we've now been able to capture enough energy to light this plaza tonight. Next slide, please. So now we have the ability, again, to generate power just by movement. We have the ability to have autonomous vehicles and EV, electric vehicles actually be powered. We have the ability now to have behavior change. But what else can we do in this ecosystem? So what we're able to do is actually point to different areas of usage, like streetlights, right? Because they're right near that particular roadbed, so we can actually shove the electricity over to those lights. The lights are LED. Now, LED in the light spectrum can host certain types of platforms digitally, like IP or Internet Protocol. So next slide, please. So what we're able to do with these LED lights is that we have a diode that's made by a company out of Sunnyvale, California called Sensity. Next slide, please. And what we're able to do with Sensity, there we go, is we put a diode in between the bulb and the house casing of that street light, and we get a 10 gig Wi-Fi network. So now let's look at the entire world of what we've just done. The ecosystem is power generation, power storage, power distribution. We're able now to run vehicles, we're able to run appliances and all sorts of equipment and that type of thing. And then, of course, at the end of the day, we're able to light things and actually have Wi-Fi. That's what we call an ecosystem. And that is the new world that facility managers are going to have to get their heads around really quick, because we are implementing. This is no longer something that says, well, you know, it's going to be there someday. Someday is now. So how do you manage this thing? What you're taking a look at right now is a management platform from an urban operating system that's being used right now in Atlanta. We actually have 83 different cities that actually use this type of system. It's a 3D portal to other types of data underneath. You know, Google Earth and Bing and all this stuff are cool. This is even cooler, because any type of data that you have in the back end that you need to manage on a grand scale, you know, be it a campus, in this case, the entire city of Atlanta, you can now start storytelling or start to see information in very unique ways that helps you make a better informed decision. So when we're talking about how do you manage those ecosystems, this is one tool that we use. Now, we're creating our own problems, actually, because think about when we have embedded in the roadway an energy producing system. Who's going to manage that? Is it the power company, or is it the Department of Transportation? So this is why high-performance urban environments are going to need sophisticated tools like what you're seeing. Now, the cool part about these tools, in this case, this is a tool called Orbi, is that they can run on any device that has a web browser. So your iPhone, your iPad, anything that runs a web browser, which means that you can actually take things out into the field and start the real usage of things like augmented reality with data, being able to see things in different ways and take action. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about, you know, the capturing of this data, how it works, how it you know, it can be used and reused for management purposes, we tend to not want to disrupt the existing systems that you're using today. In other words, if you're using, you know, like Maximo, or using Tririga, using any of these FM tools that are out there, what this does is that it allows you to click dynamically on a certain element within this cityscape, and then get into that particular session of that particular software. So this is meant to be something that sits on top for easy management, and then be able to go down and actually see what does this thing do. And here's some examples of some smart city apps that are built just for that purpose, where we're monitoring things like construction progress. How about monitoring things like energy on a grand scale, because we're able to capture that data and then dynamically code what that looks like. Next slide, please. So the fun part about this is that we're finally breaking free of, you know, reporting in an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of graphs. No, you can still get that, but the idea is that we live in a 3D environment. We should be managing in a 3D environment, and the powerful nature of how this all operates can't be understated, because now you're providing a way of moving around space and actually then taking actionable items that make sense, you know, for certain roles and certain responsibilities, meaning that the old days of thinking that you needed to have, you know, like let's say a mission command center, you know, an operations center type of thing, where you have, you know, a wall of different, you know, video TVs and you know whatnot. You don't need to have that anymore. Where the actual practical need, you're out in the field, can be actually on a mobile device. So I wanted to show those as examples of, you know, just bits and pieces of a much greater scale. I mean, we can go on for hours about all the different innovations that we can do in different type of ecosystems that make up cities. But I thought it would be appropriate to actually show what these cities look like for real. That this isn't just a PowerPoint. This isn't something that is going to happen in the future. It's happening right now. And I wanted to show you our first project that we got started with, which is called the Kingdom City, which is in the northern suburbs of Jeddah, Saudi Arabia on the west coast. Next slide, please. So the first project you're going to see here is the world's tallest building called the Kingdom Tower, where we designed the city that surrounds this tower for 1 million people. The Kingdom Tower is a 1 kilometer tall tower. It's actually a vertical city. It's under construction right now. We're about 40 floors up out of the ground. Surrounding this particular element, though, is our city. Next slide, please. And this city is the world's first city to be DC powered only. There is no AC current necessary because the way we've designed this is that each one of the buildings that you see here is its own microgrid for energy and water, which means that we cannot we don't need the transmission lines. We don't need those step downs. We're into this whole new world now that says that the Kingdom Tower and the city that's surrounding this is going to be operational by the end of 2019, where we will have automated vehicles. We will have this DC powered way of working. And the cool part about that project is that we do not have enough workers to actually build the tower and the city at the same time. So we're using digital fabrication for the city for the majority of the buildings, and where that's being done? In China. So this is how this ties back, this entire presentation, into why China, what's happening with China's facilities. Well, all the things you've seen that are happening elsewhere that, like Saudi Arabia and whatnot, tie back to the roots are happening in China. We have 5 factories in Beijing right now that are using BIM, so those building information models, that are at fabrication level, that go through what's called CNC machines that are fabricating with different materials the different buildings in an aesthetically beautiful way. They're taken apart after a QA/QC process and put into shipping containers and then shipped to Saudi Arabia. That's how we're going to build this city on time, on budget, with 0 defects and 0 change orders. It is a remarkable exercise to go through, where 15% of the manufacturing is already done, and we're anticipating learning so much from that particular project that others in the world said, wow, since you already started this thing off, we also have needs. And so our next project, which you see right now, we were invited into a project in Australia. This was actually announced originally on March 17th to the media, and as of this morning, we learned that Prime Minister Turnbull actually had the proper number of seats, 76 seats, in the election that was just concluded this morning, so that we are moving forward with this project in real time. What this project is a way of rebalancing the Australian settlement. It revolves around a high-speed rail, a maglev rail, that will connect both Sydney and Melbourne, where the way that maglev works, it doesn't do well in long distances, but it picks up a lot of speed, like let's say every 100 kilometers. So it's about a 900-kilometer run between Sydney and Melbourne, because we're going to go into the interior of Australia, not hugging around the coast. And the reason for doing that is that the land is cheap. And I have 8 stops that happen. So that's why we have 8 new smart cities of approximately 10,000 acres. So the way that this works financially is that we're purchasing the land very cheaply. But what happens is when you put a value proposition of a high-speed rail, the value capture goes up of that land, and you borrow against the spread. Real estate 101. What does this mean for facility managers? Well, for the first time ever, we're working with the FMA. Well, we're approaching the FMA. We've talked with representatives of the FMA to say we need some help from the facility management needs of, if we're to build this type of city with its own personality and how it's supposed to work, with attracting people into the interior of Australia, what do we need to know? And that's how we're building our cities. It's asking the right questions, bringing the professionals in so that we can actually do something. Now, in the Chinese world, which I'm going to hit next, we're learning a lot from how we're doing the master planning in a greenfield situation in Australia. Next slide, please. These 8 stops, by the way, I'll show you where they are because we've already purchased the land, so I don't mind showing the the map. What's interesting about this particular project is that we have 3 different jurisdictions. We have Victoria, we have New South Wales, and of course the Commonwealth itself in Canberra. The idea is that we are doing this as a private venture, so we are at risk. It's about $250 billion US dollars. That includes the high-speed rail, and we're not asking for tax breaks. The reason why is because we're looking for ways of making sure that we have the right types of initiatives in place so that we can't be called on the carpet that this will be like a government-run job. It's not. We're trying to take the taxpayer out of it, but what we do look for are things like safeguards, meaning that if there's a requirement for an environmental impact study, we want to be able to submit one that Victoria, New South Wales, and the Commonwealth can agree to instead of doing 3 of them. I mean, things like that. But the big one we're asking for is immigration reform. This project will create 9 million new jobs in Australia. 9 million. There are only 14 million able-bodied workers in the workforce in Australia. We need workers, and not just the people that are going to be shoveling stuff. We're talking about sophisticated engineering problems and that type of thing. This means that the openness of things like the TPP and other types of policies, the free trade agreements with China, we now are opening up things that we didn't plan for, but we discovered, such as there's not enough manufacturing capacity for things like refrigerators, because we're going to be building on the average 30,000 homes per year for the next 15 years to build out these 8 cities. So where are you going to get those from? China, US, Europe. So again, the idea of trade, the idea of immigration now becomes a very, very big deal. Now, in the world of facilities, what we're finding is that we like to then reapproach and reimagine this not being just in 8 individual cities, but as a region. There are certain things that could be shared, things like healthcare, education, transportation, obviously, security, safety. All those things can be shared, but every city can have its own personality. So what keeps me up at night is, who are we building these cities for? Are we trying to attract a certain type of person? What type of industry is going to be there? And that's our design exercise. Next slide, please. So this leads us into the direct, title of this particular presentation, which is, we have this opportunity now to, did I do this right? Maybe I should talk about Saudi Arabia first. Yeah, let's talk about Saudi Arabia first. So this leads us actually into, a second project that we have going on, which is high-speed rail between Jeddah, where we have our kingdom city, and Riyadh, the capital. There's a project going on called the National Transformation Program. This is being led by Crown Prince Salman, the son of the king. And this is to move Saudi Arabia away from oil as its major economy, or its main economic engine, to something else. And one of the projects that we have going is this massive project that will help, again, redistribute the population throughout the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, create jobs, and actually improve the life of the average Saudi Arabian citizen. So these 6 new smart cities are up along this corridor, are strategically placed because they have either an anchor of a UNESCO site. It could be for, there's hiking in certain areas or whatever, but there's something to build upon. But the thing that keeps me up at night, as I was just mentioned before, is who are we building these cities for? And the interesting thing about this particular project is that we need to rethink how people start to migrate over time, and how do we have an authentic city, not drop shipping a concrete jungle, but an authentic city that allows us to have people come and fall in love that this is where they want to raise their family. This is where they want to, have their kids educated. This is where they want to be, have great health care. And we can do that. But the thing is, how do you actually create those, those magnets, those anchors that are going to be attractive enough to actually bring people to actually go there? So this is why when we look at innovations, we have to think of microgrids. Things like micro waters, the energy stuff that I was just talking about, with each individual home being its own power generator, because that allows us not to go through the capital expenditure of creating like a centralized wastewater treatment plant for $100 million US, and hopefully it's sized to capacity, right? We're saying now, don't do that. Let the market drive what the development's supposed to be within the confines of, in this case, a 15,000 acre site 6 times over. So these types of ways of thinking through policy, understanding that we need to understand, at the end of the day, how do you operate an individual building, and how does it organically then connect to other buildings that make up the urban environment? So next slide, please. So this brings us to China, I hope. We at the last minute, I took all these slides, I sort of reshuffled them here. And yes, here we go. So what you're going to see is a video on the left-hand side that was created for the Olympic Committee that did choose Beijing, that hosted the Summer Games in 2008, to host the 2022 Winter Olympics. So we're going to be reusing a lot of the buildings like the Bird's Nest for the opening and closing ceremonies, and certain other buildings that were part of the Summer Olympics and, of course, the Olympic Village for the athletes. And that's going to be in downtown Beijing. The ski resort areas are going to be about 200 kilometers to the northwest of downtown Beijing, and they're building a high-speed rail to connect those areas to the downtown area to the ski resort so that your spectators, your media, your athletes can get back and forth. There will be one stop about equidistant in between, about 100 kilometers in between, that we are going to now be the joint venture partners with the world's largest utility called State Grid. So we're going to real estate develop a brand new city from scratch that will be ready in about 4 years. The fascinating thing about this project, again, is that by using things like the IFMA Shanghai chapter and others to be part of that design process to begin with, we are now recreating digitally what happens from the standpoint of operations and how can we as designers make sure that the pieces of data that are important during the design and construction process can actually have a extensible life that it can move into facility management without having to recreate information. This is going to be critical when it comes to the management of these cities. It's almost like moving from a project management office mentality of design and construction, that we reuse the same data into facility management and urban city management and not have to recreate it. It's never been done cleanly, never. I've watched a million people try it. I've been to a million different world workplace stuff. Everyone tries little bits and pieces, but not at this massive scale. So we're very excited about working in China because this is actually fulfilling what I mentioned before about the carbon emissions agreement between the US and China, because this is going to be a showcase of how this is done. We're going to be having the automated vehicles. We're going to be having the Piezo product. We will have a lot more innovation as a showcase to the world that yes, China does not have to reinvent, redo and recycle the old ways of how to manage cities, how to build cities, and then how do you power things. And this is a very exciting time because China actually has a chance to show leadership with American innovation as the driver, with the might and then showcasing the industrial might of China. Next slide, please. So when we talk about what other innovations can happen within these types of environments, we are designing and building right now in Shanghai what's called the first restaurant rain room. Now, rain rooms were created at MIT that are these rooms, and they were actually displays at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and the Tate Museum in London. And what they are is a series of grids that act like a sprinkler system. Then on the floor, it acts as a way of capturing that water and dispersing it. What this does is that there's sensors around each one of the points where the water comes out, and it understands that you're there and it won't actually let the water out. It also understands the velocity. If you're running or you're walking through this space, that you don't need an umbrella, you will never be wet. It automatically shuts off the water velocity-wise, and through mathematics and algorithms understands that you're walking at a certain pace, and it shuts it off at that appropriate time. It's a fantastic little experiential type of thing. But what we're using it for, again, is for restaurants that allow us then to have people sit down at a table, not be wet, but be surrounding with different types of rain. It could be, a light mist. It could be a steady rain. It could be a thunderstorm. But what that also does is that the white noise of the rain actually allows you to have a private conversation. So again, experiences through Internet of Things, smart city approaches, even down to an individual building level, we have a fantastic palette of innovation that we've never had before. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about this new palette, we have to have the conversations with the people that are actually managing these spaces, right? And that's where I really think that the conversations with IFMA representatives is going to be critical for how successful these things are going to be. Because again, no one's ever managed a rain environment. Now, the last thing I'd like to show you is where we're starting to create information and actually use information in unique ways. And it has to do with virtual reality, augmented reality, and what's also called mixed reality. What you're taking a look at is an application that sits inside the HTC Vive, one of the headgear virtual reality tools. This reminds me of the days of the early Macintosh, that the first real program that hit everyone between the eyes was called Mac Paint. This is a 3D painting tool called Tilt Brush, owned by Google, but licensed to HTC. What this does is it puts you in the environment of having tools that you use in Capture for either different brushes, different types of colors, that type of thing. And you're literally painting in 3D. The other thing this does is that it actually has the intensity of light that's actually built into these things. So you have this fantastic palette to actually be very creative and have yourself in the middle of your art. Where this is going and what happened, if you want to see how history repeats itself, is that after Mac Paint hit big, Mac Draw came, which was actually a drafting program. We're now looking at the next level of where Tilt Brush goes, because we're now looking at the three-dimensional qualities of being able to create space and then manage space, all within a virtual reality environment. We can actually then set data through these 3D tools that will affect the physical environment. And this is the big thing that we're learning in China, the world of cyber physical systems. There's a lot of people that use things like, mobile phones, and through certain things like WeChat and other types of programs, they're able to write other apps on top of WeChat that can affect things like lockdown, lockout procedures, turning lights off, all these different things that you can automate into an iPhone. That's just spectacular. Probably the best example has happened since July 6th of this month, when Nintendo pushed out a product called Pokemon Go. This is an augmented reality tool that uses geospatial tags that allow you to play a game in an augmented way, that you hold up your phone and the environment is blank, of course, in reality. But what you see on your phone is this whole other world that has you going on like a treasure hunt to try and find Pokemon stuff. It's the biggest thing ever to hit technology. And this is the way the world is going. The augmented virtual worlds colliding so that we can have a cyber-physical relationship based on trust of data that now creates a different type of built environment that we've never been exposed to before. It's almost like we're hitting the redo button, and we now have a new blank canvas that's allowing data to create a more safe, a more secure, and a better user experience. Next slide, please. So with all of that said, I'm very proud, of our work in China. I actually have my family here now. We're into this, whole world of being able to take new tools like virtual reality that you'll see right here, where we can have theme parks, which is now, we have 4 of them going up in China that allow us to go into this other space that you don't need to fit out an entire, interior anymore, because in the virtual reality world, you can actually map what those walls and ceilings are, and then actually superimpose other types of environments. Now imagine that. What happens when you're managing space, but the space of the user, and you can have 2 or 3 people in there, are 3 fundamentally different surfaces and experiences. This actually now starts to challenge the very notion of what is a building. So we're having a lot of fun as we start moving through these experiences, looking at the new tools, how they're affecting things. Next slide, please. I believe the one that I'm about to show you here is what's happening with these theme parks, especially in Riyadh that we're building. We're actually sticking a 30,000 seat arena for spectators to watch other people play. You think that's weird, but this past April at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, they had a 2D gaming championship where 42,000 people sat for 3 days to watch people play games. I don't get it, but the other generation does, as you see here. And this is the way that things are going in the world of VR and AR. We have to pay attention. There are lots of best practices still to be defined, and we need everyone's experience at this point, because what we don't want are the Nintendo guys defining what the built environment is, because people are so engrossed with the experiences of augmented reality that they are disappointed when they see the reality. So this whole relationship of trust is moving into a different space that, quite frankly, it's the most exciting time I've ever seen in our industry. Next slide, please. Sorry for the delay. I just don't see things. I'm not sure if it's just the internet or what, but what I wanted to do is, just say that, there is a tremendous amount of opportunity. What also can be stagnating to all this excitement are things like, in certain areas, especially in China, things like regulations. If there's any guidance that I can give to the Chinese facility management community, is you should really be preparing for the new regulations that will require the sharing of things like real-time energy data. Working with State Grid, I know that we are responsible for 319 million new existing smart meters that have different types of data points that are required reporting. Things like for security, the CCTV camera feeds, safety security plans, and other sensor-based data, sometimes referred to as the Internet of Things, they are being regulated quickly, so pay attention. The idea of reporting. Right now, 3D visualization tools, as you saw, are very exciting. They can point to things, but understand that we're not trying, or no one's trying, to disenfranchise the existing systems that are in place. We just want to augment it so that you have a better user experience and you can make a better informed decision. And then processes. You should really define what that is. What are you trying to do? The idea of capturing, reporting, distributing data are going to be challenging the traditional ways of work, because we're talking about the flow of data, not just the documents that are created by data. So as we start to move into this new generation of looking at how technology and innovation is affecting things through the use of cities as examples, and then coming right down to your building that you have to manage every day, I think we have a lot of learning to do. Very exciting time. And last slide, please. And I just wish you all the luck. I'd like to hand this back to Ricardo. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It's a very great presentation. It's very interesting for all of us. And let's see our attendance. Well, Paul,
sure.
Let's wait 1 minute. There is some questions here.
Yes. So let me go through these questions, Ricardo. So the first question, of course, is the smart cities are in a whole new world of risk analysis and modeling, right? So are there groups working on the smart city systems related risks and vulnerabilities in a comprehensive way? Officially, yes. There's a group called the Smart Cities Council that are made up of both vendors, service providers, professionals, and just interested parties, right? They're run out of Washington, D.C. And the interesting thing about that particular group is that they are looking at it from a policy aspect. In other words, how do you start to help people understand that certain regulations have to be put in place because we can't be afraid of innovation because of its inherent risks. Which is why, when we take a look at how we run our business, we'd rather be on the owner's side of things rather than being just a contractor or a consultant, because then if something doesn't work, we don't meet that contractual obligation and there could be damages. So, it's a very interesting time that we decided to go on to that owner side of things with the risk, because now we can't fire ourselves, right? That's only one example, but what Smart City Council is doing is actually looking at that type of thing, not so much tort reform here in the US, but around the world, about how do we lessen people's anxiety about trying something new. But great question. Cool. So with that, Ricardo, I'll hand this back to you, and I just want to thank the attendees very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. We have some problems here, but I'd like to say thank you for everybody. We have just on the time. Please, for FMCC, call for application for kit for Excellent Scholarship Award, and we are see in our webpage. We are always welcome volunteers from FMCC group and to work with us. Look for and Global FM and IFMA IFMA events from today, and please use your hashtag WorldFMDay and then your Twitters. See the next sections from India at 9:30 a.m. Houston time and 10 a.m. Houston time, and then the other and 10:30 a.m. Houston time in Cairo. And if my conscious, this is all the conscious that we have in the work on IFMA group. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for everything. And please see this recording, and then IFMA and FMCC website and our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and see you in the next sections. Thank you both.